Prog, huh? Prog. What is prog? Progressive. Progress. Right? Prog is progress. Progressive. More music education. Well, where does this whole thing start? Well, really, if you want to go back, I see Bach is your first prog musician because of all the progress in his writing and arranging. There was a major leap, and they for some reason they called it Broke. I'm not sure where that stems from. I haven't dug into the history of the term Broke, but progressive, classical. Okay, these guys are all very well educated musicians, and so and then from there, right, we go into like I don't know. There's music scene is kind of like a cross between. Well, let's talk about early radio. So they call that country, right? Early radio, and it was thanks to the Lomaxes that we have that. Thanks to the Lomaxes, we have early blues, what they called field recordings. All right, so really, I was watching a documentary on Prog, and the guy really said it really starts when they invented the recording machine, a way to record guys improvising, because before that time, the only way to record your song is to physically write it down on paper. You wrote there. The only reason we know what Bach and Beethoven and all them guys sound like is because they wrote it down on paper. There is no recordings of it. So it's very true. Recording helps progress the whole music, because now folk music that wasn't documented, this is all passed down generation to generation. A lot of people don't know how to read or write music. It's just family tradition. Same with the blues, the early blues stuff. And then the best thing our United States government ever did was start the Library of Congress. The Lomax brothers took a businessman coupe, rigged up a record lathe in the back of it and a microphone to go down south and record Robert Johnson. Well, by the time they got there, he already passed away. But there's some really cool recordings that you can check out. Muddy Waters on his front porch playing stuff. And then there's a few other guys. I think Son House, his name is Eddie as well. And he has my same birthday, March 21st. So does Bach, March 21st. Yeah. So recording has a big deal to do with Prog, right? But then also the jazz is coming along, and the swing, and then you got these big bands, right? And you got big bands now that are not just black, they're white big bands, and they're very popular in the 20s, 30s, and 40s, right? And by the early 50s, I was talking to a jazz guy who was there doing it in the early 50s, and all the jazz guys were thinking like, yeah, we're next. We're going to get our own radio. We're going to be the biggest thing on the planet is jazz. And Bill Haley comes along and knocks that all out of the picture, right? And turns it into rock and roll. Bill Haley and Elvis Presley, all right? Now, what's the big difference with those? It's scaled down. Is the musicianship real high? Scotty Moore's musicianship is pretty good. You know, a lot of them are, because this whole rock and roll, if you're a guitar player, you're either playing country or you're playing jazz. So that's where these guys are coming from. Same with the bass, the upright bass. He's either got a country background or he's into jazz. So that's where you get this melting pot of rock and roll. And then it's amped up, man. I mean, look how upset the older generation was with rock and roll. I mean, they thought these kids were crazy, right? So then you get that, and that's the late 50s, and the whole rockabilly scene amped up. And again, now, what else helped create prog? The electric guitar. Because without the electric guitar, you don't have Elvis and rockabilly. You don't have Gene Vincent and I forget his name, but him shredding it up in the beginning, playing these licks of, Jeff Beck talks about it's like, what in the world was that? Really pushing the envelope. But again, rock and roll's amped up, man. It isn't like a jazz band saying, oh, this stuff is, and then with, Elvis swinging his hips. You know the story there on that. Right, so the electric guitar, and that's the last documentary I was looking at, and talking about recording. He didn't mention the electric guitar at all. The electric guitar is very, very important to the development of this whole thing, which we now call prog. Another thing that I found very interesting is, remember, back in Bach's time was an age of enlightenment, an age of intelligence was the word of the day. Being able to read and write. We're starting to understand the stars. We're starting to understand physics and science. So everything's based on intelligence. And guess what? The music reflects that. It's an intelligent music. It really is. Where early rock and roll, is it very intelligent? That but it's still very much part of the human spirit. Because what are we doing? We speak the language of the human spirit. So we'll talk some more about prog next time. Peace.